Hi guys, and welcome to this video on the new moon in Gemini that happens on the 6th of June 2024. Thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure to be with you today. The chart you see next to me here, that's a snapshot of the sky at the moment this new moon will take place. So I'm going to analyze that chart to see what the planets are doing, how they interact, and what energy they create. And that then will influence all of us. Once I've done that, I'll go through each sign of the zodiac from Aries through to Pisces to give you a specific message for your zodiac sign. And what I mean by that is your sun sign. So the same as when you're reading a newspaper, when you're checking the horoscope in there, that's based on your sun sign. My horoscopes are the same. So this new moon happens at 12:37 in the afternoon, and that's based on my time zone. I'm in the UK. If you're in a different location, then take the time difference into account. But a new moon isn't just an event that happens at 1 minute and then it's over, right? It takes a couple of days. So currently, I'm filming this on the 5th. The moon is kind of waning away. It's getting darker and smaller, or what we can see. And then the new moon in itself is that moment where it's pitch black, and then it starts to wax again and get bigger and a little crescent appears. But I do think it's a 3-day event. So regardless of where you're at, I feel you'll be able to tap into this and you'll be influenced by it around the 5th, 6th, and 7th of June. So you can see in this chart here that the sun and the moon, the two luminaries, are conjunct at 16 degrees in Gemini. So the moon, the way I see that in a natal chart is it's your feeling, it's what gives you a sense of ease and comfort, what feels like home. The moon can be said to be the mother, your intuition, the things that are kind of going on internally. So you could say that the moon is your heart, your feeling, and the sun is what you're striving towards on a conscious level, your head. So this is what I would like to be, this is what I feel to be empowering, and this is what's going to make my inner child happy. It's also a sense of control. I have my own energy. If I pursue what I want and if I shape things, then I'm causing an effect, and I feel like I'm in charge of my own life and my own circumstances, and that gives a sense of power. So when the two are sitting together like this, there's perfect communication between your heart and your head. So that in itself means that this is a good time to figure things out. If anything has been vague or fuzzy lately, then looking at it over this 3-day period, you're very likely to come up with a very clear answer and to come to a conclusion that you can actually trust. You're not likely to get things wrong at the moment during this new moon. And what I also find interesting is that recently we had a parade of planets on the 3rd and 4th of June. You could actually see that with the naked eye. And 6 planets aligned. So we had Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They all formed a straight line. So I don't just think that this new moon is a good period to understand things, but I also think that planetary line represented a moment where you have total understanding, and it's a good idea to actually draw a line in your own life and to say, do you know what serves me and what doesn't serve me? What's the past, or what do I want to be in the past, and what do I want to focus on in future? So I feel that this new moon is exceptional in the sense that it will give you total confidence and understanding, and also you'll feel like you have permission to make big changes and to say, do you know what, I've endured this, or this has been part of my life for a while, and I have options. I'm going to decide whether I want to continue on with this or if I don't. And I think this one particularly is about relationships. So both the sun and the moon being together, by the way, if you have a new moon in your natal chart, in your birth chart, right, that's associated with the pioneer, the person who thinks outside of the box, the person who's energized and who initiates, the person who leads, the person who uses all their fuel, their energy to cause some sort of effect. So if you have that in your natal chart, it's a wonderful kind of placement to have. But here we all tap into this, and at 16 degrees, 1 in 6 being 7, the mind and creativity, it's kind of like I have permission to make sense of things myself. I can assess things and see what things mean, what relationships mean, what my job means in my life, my living situation. And it's really that place of feeling like you have the right to come to your own conclusions. And it's a good thing that you can trust here, because you're not jumping to conclusions, with this being in Gemini, you're pulling in this air sign, which is all about communication. It's ruled by Mercury, the communication planet. So you can trust your own judgment, and you can also get creative with what's happening in your life in order to understand it. So you'll have this ability to see past the surface of things and instead to understand how things make you feel. So it's not just a job, but it's the quality of going into that building every day and how you feel about it. It's the difference between this is the way it looks on paper, but this is how it actually affects me, or how it kind of changes my experience. So again, if anything hasn't made sense, or if you've been in a situation, for instance, where everyone's like, oh, that's so great that you have this position, for instance, if it's a job, and you feel the same, that you've had this big break and that you're very lucky to be in that position, but for some reason it doesn't feel good, even though it should. This is the kind of moment where it's like, okay, the penny drops, and this is why I feel the way I do. And that knowledge then will allow you to make really clear, good decisions. Again, that gets your life kind of organized, but that allows you to draw a line and to say, do you know what? Well, if I don't feel happy in this, regardless of what it says on paper, then it's good enough for me to make a change based on that. And that's kind of interesting on a bigger scale, right? Because a lot of us don't even give ourselves permission to feel certain things. If society says this is right and good, then who am I to argue? Well, during this new moon in Gemini, you're not going to argue, but you're certainly going to say, this is my interpretation of the situation, and that's right for me, and that's good and fine and proper. And because this is how it affects me, no one else knows what goes on in my heart, in my head. It's down to me to pioneer and to get creative with my circumstances and to make changes if I want to. Okay, so 16 being 7, I mentioned, the mind and creativity. And next to the new moon in Gemini, we also have Venus. Venus is the planet of love and beauty and connection and creativity and expressing your love. It's also at 16 degrees in Gemini. So you are able to express things very well. You'll come across as informed, as positive. And even if you have to share things that are difficult or that challenge other people, you'll be able to do that in a kind of warm, factual way. I know the two aren't usually mutually beneficial. Either you're factual, and that's the end of it, or you're warm, and it's not all about the facts, but it's about the way you make other people feel, right? So that's again what I'm trying to say here, that this is a perfect blending of the emotions and the facts and the conclusions that you've reached. And there doesn't need to be an argument. You can present your ideas as really matter of fact and in a non-confrontational way. Ultimately, what this is about is understanding things for yourself. And then with Venus sitting right next to the sun and the moon, how do I use this information to nurture and support myself? How do I love myself? And of course, if there are certain things that are bothering me, then a loving thing would be to get rid of those things. If you look at the glyph of Gemini as well, the actual symbol of it, right? It looks like a doorway. So if you took the roof and the base off, it would be like a Roman numeral 2. That again is a relationship, and I think the main relationship is you and the way you treat yourself in your life. But with the two horizontal lines on either side, it does become a doorway. And by loving yourself and by saying, this is what I understand to be good and right and proper, I'm now moving through a new doorway into a new chapter of my life. And I am going to draw this line and say, this is no longer what I want to continue with. So I'm going to operate differently, and I'm going to move into a different era of my experience by listening to my own analysis of the circumstances I'm in at the present moment. So you become an expert in your own life, and you also have the confidence and the courage to say, I'm going to make changes based on these bits of information that have occurred to me. Nearby as well, we've got Mercury, the communication planet, at 6 degrees in Gemini, and it's 10 degrees away from the new moon. So I still count that as a conjunction because I use 10-degree orbs in my chart analysis. Mercury rules Gemini, and Mercury rules two signs. It rules Gemini and Virgo. And when it's in Gemini, it's about using the intellect and knowledge to problem solve and to find alternatives and to find different ways forward. In Virgo, Mercury is much more about learning and assessing things and making sense of them. And 6 in numerology is a temporary opportunity. So we've got the communication planet urging you to use this chance to express what it is you're feeling and what you understand, both personally to yourself and to other people, in order to find a different way forward. So if you look at 6 in numerology being this opportunity, right? And then the doorway of Gemini, it's really all about making changes and not having to endure things that either don't make sense to you or that you don't enjoy. Next to Mercury, we've got Jupiter, the lucky planet. That's at 2 degrees in Gemini. And to me, that's all about relationships. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system, and it's about having more than enough, and it's about good fortune, and fundamentally it's about growth. Where do I feel I can expand and acquire more or share more or more, right? 1 and 2 is a relationship. 2 in numerology is cooperation and relationships. And then in Gemini, it's about expressing your ideas about the things that you're connected with, whether it's a relationship with another human being, another person, or your job or your living situation. But all of those dynamics, all of the things that do connect to you in some way, are going to become very clear. The growth is of that Gemini ability to assess everything very, very well. And the key to me, again, is, do these relationships support me and do they bring something positive into my life? Or is this just a bunch of nonsense that I really should get rid of and that I'd be happier without? And I think the good luck is that your ability to make sense of things is enlarged and expanded to the point where you feel that you can't be wrong. And I think that's most of the battle sorted already, because you have this great sense of confidence that I don't need someone else to tell me what this is about. I can make sense of this myself. I have my own ideas, and I'm going to listen to my own ideas first and foremost. So the fact that all of these are sitting together in a stellium, I always spell it when I say it because it's a weird word. It's STELLIUM, and that's when 3 or more planets are sitting together. And we also had that planetary parade on the 3rd and 4th of June. Things are very organized as far as the planets are concerned. And I would say that the Sun and the Moon being very personal, but then the personal planets Venus and Mercury, very, very influential in terms of who you are and the way you operate, supported by Jupiter. I think it's an expansion of you as an individual. And what I mean by that, it's all the other influences fall off your grid, and the key thing that you're looking at is yourself and your experience, and whether that experience can be improved or whether it's just perfection all the time, every day, and whether things ought to stay the way they are. Now, for most of us, not everything is perfection. So these kind of moments are really useful and important, so that we can make changes and improve our own circumstances. And what I keep being kind of brought back to is that another person is only going to understand a little part of you, right? They'll come into contact with you and they'll have their own impression of who you are. They may see you completely differently than you see yourself, or they may not know that you have a hidden talent for music, and they only see you in terms of your day job. And then when you, for instance, talk about the passion for music, they may be very surprised and they say things like, "Oh, I didn't realize you had this side to you." So my point is, you're aware of all the sides to you. No one else is going to be. So I would then argue that that makes you an expert about yourself, so that it's really important that the expert does the deciding, because it's your experience, your life. If you find that you need to check in with other people a lot before you come to a decision, if you feel that other people's needs come before your own, then this is a wonderful opportunity to check back in with yourself and to say, actually, hang on, I am going to make changes because they please me, and that's good enough. So nearby as well, we have Uranus. Uranus is what could be. It's what's outside of normal expectations. It's the random, it's the uncontrollable. And that's at 24 degrees in Taurus. It's technically not conjunct, but it's nearby enough to have an effect, I feel. And the decisions that you come to on this day and the conclusions you kind of reach, they are going to have a massive impact on your actual life circumstances. So for instance, I mean, if I don't like this job and now I understand that, and I have the willingness to make a decision around it and change my job, then of course your future work-wise is going to look very different because you made that decision, right? So I'm trying to make the point that, one, you can trust your own judgment. You're not going to get it wrong. Also, Mercury, the communication planet, is direct. It's not retrograde. So you see things as they truly are. Venus is also direct. So it's not like something suddenly appeals to you and then in a few weeks it's like, what was I thinking? That's not the case either. So you can really trust your own kind of thinking here. And you also have the ability to make decisions on these things, even if other people don't understand, or if other people, and this is the big one, if they don't approve. So you can suit yourself, so to speak, and improve your own circumstances by maintaining this dialogue with you. Then we have the new moon forming a couple of relationships with other things in the chart. So first of all, it squares, so there's friction between these two things. It squares the part of fortune at 23 degrees in Virgo. Virgo, I mentioned before, is also ruled by the communication planet Mercury. And 23 is 5, numerology-wise, that's freedom. So it's your expertise, your ability to analyze and to reach the answer. That's really the good luck factor here. And that's going to open up your entire life so it doesn't have to contain aspects that make you feel stuck or oppressed or like you have no choice. Then the new moon forms a trine with the south node at 12 degrees in Libra. So kind of what's in the past, or certainly what's being put on hold here, is the consideration of what other people need. You come first. And for some people, that's always the case. But for some people, that's hardly ever the case. It's always someone else who needs, cheering up, or you're considering how they may react. This isn't going to be the issue. And the main thing is about communicating with yourself so that you can experience this better and new beginning. You can kind of upgrade your circumstances here. Then we also have... I'll look at, it's kind of a grand trine. A grand trine is a big blue triangle in the chart, and it's an area of major talent. And again, if you have that in your natal chart, it's worth knowing, because usually it's in one element and it gives you a major talent for one particular area of life. And it would really work in your favor to be aware of that. I'll come back to that in a sec, but the new moon, it sesqui squares Pluto at 1 degrees in Aquarius. I made a separate video on Pluto changing signs in January. It came out of Capricorn, where it was for 15 years, since 2008, and now it's moved into Aquarius, which is a much better fit, because Pluto is rebirth, it's the phoenix, and in Aquarius, it's the rebirth of ideas. And at 1 degree, it's really, I have these ideas, they're going to serve me in my life, and it makes sense to pay attention to them. So Pluto floating around, kind of filling everyone with new ideas. This new moon in Gemini allows you to interpret all of those ideas and to make sense of them and to actually find a way to implement them in a way that's useful to you. Then we have the new moon forming a square with Saturn at 18 degrees in Pisces. And that's really nice because 1 and 8 is 9. That's spirituality and completion. In the tarot, it's the hermit. And it's really the person who's seeking enlightenment, right? Saturn is stability. It's something you can rely on. And Pisces is the connection to the higher realms, the other realities. So Saturn kind of underpins this and gives you permission to look around without any anxiety, to evaluate the different things that you're considering and to say, okay, that's the conclusion I've reached. It's okay for me to reach that conclusion and to make changes without panicking or without stressing myself out. Oh no, what have I done? What if I'm wrong? You know, that kind of thing. And that then, Saturn, it opposes the part of fortune in Virgo. And that then goes back via another square to the new moon in Gemini. And that's called a T-square. It's this red triangle. And that's an area of friction where you may be back and forth. It gives you a lot of energy, but usually the solution is where it peaks. And it peaks via this new moon in Gemini. And the way I'm seeing that right now is kind of like a drain in a sink. Everything may be floating around in your head, in your heart, and it's all jumbled and moving of its own accord, but ultimately all roads lead to you and your ability to make meaning out of what's happening. So it's like you have this perfect meaning-making machine built in, and if there is anything in your life that doesn't make sense, please look at it today, because it will. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I didn't mention the Grand Trine. Let's look at that. Okay, so it's a little squished, and just bear with me while I go through this. So first of all, the new moon in Gemini, it trines the south node in Libra, right? But then Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini, they trine the part of fortune in Virgo, the rising in Virgo, the ascendant, and Black Moon Lilith in Virgo. They then connect to Pluto and Aquarius, and it goes back to Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini. So what's unusual about this Grand Trine, first of all, is that it's a little squished, and some astrologers wouldn't count it, but when it's close enough, in my case, I always look at things like that, whether it's a mystic rectangle or a grand cross. If it's not exactly, I still count it. And because I'm being kind of generous, usually it is in one element, but this one is now in air, Gemini and Aquarius, and earth, Virgo. So if you think of that, air, a masculine element, my ideas out there, and earth, a feminine element, being affected by things, receiving things, it's the same thing as Uranus and Taurus. It's your ideas that occur to you on this day that are going to be hugely influential in what the practical circumstances of your future look like. And you have the opportunity to free yourself from unpleasant circumstances and to experience more freedom in your life by making changes today or over the 3-day period, 5th and 6th and 7th of June. So the talent is to really take things which only exist internally, like on an intellectual level, and to translate those into practical earthy situations. So I've decided, for instance, that I don't want to live in Austria, I want to live in England. That's the idea. And then a few months later, then I'm here, right? So that's the kind of thing. It can really change your whole experience around. And the ideas that come to you during this time are going to be profound, but positive, and there's certainly going to be improvements. Then we also have Mars and Chiron sitting together in Aries. They don't connect to the moon at all, but they still show up in a way that I think is really significant. So Mars rules Aries, so that's super happy. And Mars in Aries says, this is what I want, and this is what's in my way. So rather than considering wanting something else, I'm going to knock the things in my way out of my way so that I make progress and I get what I want. So 28 degrees, which is 10, which is 1. That's, again, I'm the pioneer. I'm the person who says what's what. And next to it is Chiron, the wounded healer, 22 degrees in Aries. So making these decisions for yourself today, during the new moon, without compromise, is really going to heal not just your circumstances, but it'll give you a sense of confidence. Like, I did this for myself, and look at me now. I'm in a much better place, thanks to my ideas. With these being 6 degrees away from each other, I also think that you're going to evaluate relationships, both personal relationships you have with people and relationships with institutions like the government, the tax people, the pension company, your employer, all of those people. And you'll give yourself permission, as in Mars, the soldier, confident, doesn't doubt itself very much, right? And if healing is required and Mars is sitting on top of Chiron, then if I decide that I don't want to connect with this institution any longer, I hold these two responsible for giving you the fire and the drive and the confidence to actually see it through. So if something is a huge decision that's going to change everything, you'll still have the kind of nerve to go through with it because it's right for you. The North Node is at 12 degrees in Aries. This is about making yourself more independent in the sense that I choose what I like and what I don't like, and I don't have to tolerate things I don't want. And then Neptune is at 29 degrees in Pisces, and it opposes all the Virgo stuff near the ascendant. And again, the friction between those two is, I'm not going to look at what could be and how things could improve. I'm going to judge them on their merit today and see if they work. And if they don't work today, then I'm going to get rid of them. I'm not living in dreamland. I'm living in Virgo land, where I'm going to listen to what makes sense in a practical way, and I'm going to ensure that I adapt things positively. Saturn, I've mentioned, that's that spiritual kind of confidence and the tendency not to kind of spin yourself out by making these big changes. And then we've got some empty houses as well. The second, third, and fourth. Second house is money and your practical belongings. Third is communication, your way of seeing things. The fourth is your roots and your family, what makes you feel home. And then the 10th and 11th, career. And 11th can be hopes and dreams, but it can also be connections in an informal way with other people, like friendships. And the fact that all of these are empty, that's why I feel your ideas will imprint themselves. So ideas that lead to changes in your work, or ideas that lead to you being able to realize your hopes and dreams, or to feel more rooted and grounded in your life, or to make an income that actually supports you, or to see things in a way and then to prove it to yourself, hey, I was right and I'm glad I made these changes because look at me now. Things are better. Okay, so the strongest modes on the day is mutable. So it's about seeing everything as somewhat pliable. Nothing is fixed, nothing is beyond your reach, nothing is unadaptable. And again, the strongest element, which makes sense, is air. It's all about your ideas and ways of seeing things. Let's see if there's anything I've missed. I mentioned the T-square, I mentioned that squished little grand trine. Nope, I think that's it. Okay, let's look at each sign of the zodiac then. Aries, you're going to find it super easy to identify your feelings and to express your own feelings. Especially difficult emotions or things that you want to say, and you have a sense that the other person who's hearing this may not like what you're saying, may not like the message, but you feel this needs to be said, like this is what's right for me. Then those kind of situations, which are somewhat uncomfortable and not everyone's favorite kind of thing, right? You'll be able to express those truths really well and clearly. So if you sense that your partner never gives you any space and you feel somewhat suffocated, then you'll find the right words to express that, whether your partner likes that or not. So congrats, that's liberating, and you'll be able to take a challenging situation like that and manage it in the best way possible. Taurus, you're going to see areas of your life where you're working hard, but you're not being rewarded for your efforts. So you'll recognize what can't and shouldn't continue to drain you. You'll recognize how you can stop this from happening and how to find better alternatives. So if you're doing 18-hour days, but you can't rent your own place, then you'll start to see that something is really off here and I need to change it. Gemini, this is obviously your new moon because your energy is being pulled in, so you're gonna feel at the top of your game here. But a good thing for you to consider, with this being a new moon, a time to kind of set new intentions, plant seeds in order to watch them grow, right? Ask yourself what ways of thinking and operating are doing you more harm than good. So you get to put that lens on yourself, and let's say you, I don't know, every 2 weeks you go on a bender, right? And you disappear for a few days. Then you'll start to see that that may not be the best way forward, work-wise, health-wise, and getting other people to trust you wise. Sorry, that's a bit of a simple example. But ultimately, Gemini, if there are things about yourself that you felt unclear about or powerless over even, you'll be able to identify your role in it, the way you do operate, and you'll find ways of letting go of these things to feel better and to streamline your life moving forward by not including problematic behavior that may have a negative effect on your own experience. Cancer, you're going to find this amazing sense of support from within. And what that's going to do for you is it's going to allow you to not be dependent on any other person, or even you'll notice where you are dependent on other people in your life. So that then is a wonderful opportunity to let go of those things or to change it if you're not comfortable with it. But it's also a great opportunity for you, Cancer, to connect on a spiritual level for the first time, if that's not something you've looked into before, and to experience that sense of loving support from the universe. So if you've never felt that, you know, that feeling of I'm walking in the sunlight of the spirit here, which that's a phrase I borrowed from somewhere else. People who will know. I didn't come up with that. Just, you know, bibliography time. So you will be able to experience that wonderful sense of universal loving support via the higher realms. Leo, you can ask yourself where you've censored yourself in life or told yourself that this is not possible for me. And you'll be able to understand what the reasoning behind that was. So you'll see these kind of things very clearly, where you hold yourself back, where you stand in your own way. And particularly if you've been sabotaging yourself when it comes to realizing certain hopes and dreams, you'll see that reality is very different, or that things have changed, and that is no longer appropriate, and that you can realize your own hopes and dreams, and that this is where the only thing that's standing in your way really is that self-sabotage of thinking I can't do this, or this is not for me, or this is something I'll never be able to acquire for myself. So there's a greater sense of freedom through that. Virgo, how could you work so that you don't feel like you're a hostage in your job, or a hostage to money or security? If you've been stuck because of things like the benefits that your job offers you, even though you don't like the job, or it's the pension contribution, or you don't like your living situation, but you like the people you live with, the community, you'll find other options that could work better overall and will give you a better return for your efforts. On top of that, you'll have the confidence to let go of things that do support you in some way, but that are less than ideal. And you'll be able to throw things out that aren't good, even if they have aspects to them that are positive. Like, I don't like the job, but I like my colleagues, right? That kind of thing. You'll be able to let go of that without feeling reckless or irresponsible. And then you can create space for a better circumstance to come along moving forward. Libra, the question for you is, what information are you missing, and how could you fill that gap? How could you get the information that you're not aware of? Which, I know how that sounds. If I don't know it, how am I going to know what I don't know, and how am I going to get it, right? That's where the light bulb goes on here, and you'll be like, oh, this is somewhere I could inform myself, and I feel this is going to help me resolve this current situation. So you have the opportunity to learn something new, both from talking to other people and from reading what they've written via books and academic journals or whatever it may be. Your eyes are really going to open to gaps in knowledge, and also preconceived notions and ideas that keep you kind of blinkered and that keep you from seeing. And what that then leads to is a greater sense of connection, because you have implemented the knowledge of another person or what someone's written, and that makes you feel more complete. So for you, this is a process of becoming teachable, and then being grateful for acquiring knowledge that is going to help you in a personal way. Scorpio, how can you take the good energy that you've contributed to people close to you, and how can you take this talent that you've got for creating wonderful relationships in your life? And how can you make that accessible to more people who could also benefit from this wisdom? So how can you take something, Scorpio, that's working in your personal life, between one and two or a few people, and how can you now make that public so that other people who don't necessarily know you personally can benefit from your relationship skills? How can they learn from you? So having said that, Scorpio and Libra, you guys might go on really nicely this week. Sagittarius, you're going to become aware of limiting beliefs in your relationships and how they create distance between you and that other person. So the question for you, Sagittarius, is where have I put the walls up in my life? You'll find the reason for the wall. So for instance, I need to protect myself, or I don't want other people knowing my business, again, to protect myself. And you can see why it's there, and you can then make a conscious decision of whether you want to keep the wall up or you don't, or whether you want to bring it down. So Sagittarius, you have the opportunity to remove blocks that keep you and other people at a distance from each other and create more intimacy and closeness as a result. Capricorn, you can find ways to use your knowledge and your expertise in a way that would see you working more effectively and in a more specialized way, rather than just working harder. So you can use your knowledge and expertise to create more quality work rather than more quantity work. And that will save you a lot of time and effort. So the question is, what niche could you occupy and get rewarded for it? What do you know that other people don't, basically? And if you want to, how could you monetize that knowledge and even turn it into a career? Something that maybe would reduce your hours. So a shift that would see you working in a much more niche kind of way, and that would then take some pressure off you, especially time-wise. Aquarius, you're going to see where you've been holding yourself back from love and what the reasons for that are. You'll also find a new willingness to try again and to take new kind of emotional risks in order to get what you want, whether that's just feeling love via connection to the higher realms, or love via another person, or love a place that you're really fond of. So you'll see why there have been blocks or why you've been holding yourself back. You know, like for instance, I love this place so much that I don't want to move there because it won't be the same. You know, that kind of thing. I'm frowning because that just threw me. Okay, Pisces, the question for you is, who have you tolerated because they're either a long-term friend or they're a family member? And who would you be better off not tolerating? Sorry, that's a little tough. But I think if you've been overly forgiving, this new moon in Gemini will kind of highlight to you that, wow, life wouldn't be worse if I got rid of this old friend of mine who always puts me down and criticizes me. I think I could survive that, you know? You know, that kind of thing. You'll be able to see it via the facts as they appear to you on the 5th, 6th, and 7th during this new moon. And you'll be able to look at that very, like in a very just intellectual way and not via an emotional way. So you'll see that, you know, the old friend, for instance, does always criticize you. And rather than, and then coming to the conclusion and saying, I'm going to, you know, withdraw from that person a little bit, you'll see the factual value of it. You won't feel guilty about it emotionally and go things like, well, but you know, we have been friends for such a long time and who am I to like withdraw or whatever it may be. You're going to see it in a very cut and dry kind of unemotional way. And then you're also able to make difficult changes based on those realizations that are also less emotional. So if you want to block someone, and usually you'd feel like, I couldn't do that, that's impossible. Then if it makes sense on just an information level, you'll be able to do that. Okay guys, so I hope that gives you an idea of what's coming up here during this new moon in Gemini. If you'd like a personal reading with me, please get in touch via my website, gregoryscott.com. Click on shop or the book your reading button to order a reading with me. And I'll draw up your birth chart by taking your place of birth, date of birth, and time of birth Once I've got that info, and if you don't know the time of birth, then please order a chart rectification with me. That's a process where I actually work it out. You send me 10 or more life events and I manually find the time of birth. And then once I have your chart drawn up, I can analyze that. So if there's any questions, if there are any questions around the self or what's coming up in future or best dates to do certain things or specific locations that may work for you or not. If you have any of those questions or anything else, please do get in touch with me for a personal reading. Check out my other videos. I do a weekly horoscope. I also do a daily tarot reading on my channel. Please consider becoming a member of the channel to watch the dailies. In the description, there'll be a link tree link that has all my socials on one page. So if you want to find me on Instagram or on Cameo or on Twitter, X, on Facebook, they're all linked there. My website's also on there. But what appealed to me was the neatness of how everything was listed. So that'll be in the description. Please do get in touch with me for a personal reading if you'd like me to speak to me. Have a wonderful time here during this new moon in Gemini. I hope you make amazing, life-changing, wonderful adaptations to your experience so that it feels better and more rewarding. Have a great time, and I'll speak to you soon. All the best.